Hello to everyone that is joining us so far. Hope you guys are having a lovely Tuesday. So as everyone's joining, I'll introduce myself. So my name is Karina Lynn. I'm the Senior Marketing and Communications Officer for the School of Law at Queen Mary, and I'm joined here with the lovely Gavin Sutter. If you want to introduce yourself, Gavin.
Hi, yes, my name is, as you can see on the screen, I believe, Gavin Sutter. I am one of the technology, media, telecoms staff at CCLS, and I've been with Queen Mary for 26 years next month, and I'm very much the media guy on campus. So media law modules are where you'll see me crop up.
Amazing. So if you guys have any questions along the way, feel free to put them in the Q&A section. I'll respond to any that I can while Gavin's giving his presentation. And then at the end, Gavin will be open for any questions you guys have.
Okay, lovely. Well, bear with me one second. I'm going to share my screen. And there we are. So you should all be able to see my screen now with the slides. So I'm going to really give you some idea about what it's like to uh, study postgrad law at CCLS, to follow one of our programs with this. So there we go. So this is our home base, our location in London. We are part of Queen Mary, one of the core universities within the University of London, although we are not based for the most part at the Mile End campus. Our undergraduate law faculty is there. Some of the postgraduate teaching is done at Mile End. Our human rights aspect of the LLM is largely based there. Most CCLS staff are, however, based a little bit further into the middle of town at our CCLS premises on Lincoln's Inn Fields, and I chat to you a little bit more about that as we go on. But basically, we're right in the heart of what's known as legal London. If you look diagonally across the square outside our front door, you can see Lincoln's Inn itself, where, of course, within one of the buildings in that particular campus is where the Court of Chancery used to sit before the Judicature Acts in the later 19th century. And that would have been where, if there are any Charles Dickens fans in the audience, where he would have envisaged the events in Bleak House taking place. In another direction, we're very close to Gray's Inn, which is, of course, where Dickens was a clerk of court. The courts, the High Court and the civil courts on the Strand at the Royal Courts of Justice, are a very short walk from us, going directly south towards the river. So we're really bang in the middle of London. Our nearest neighbours are Michon de Rea, one of the significant firms working in the area of media law and reputation, particularly, comes under their purview. So it's a really good spot locationally to be studying law, and it makes it really nice for us to be able to bring in our friends from surrounding chambers and law firms to get involved in what we do at CCLS, because, of course, as you, I'm sure, are aware from our reputation, we're an institute that is very keen not only on being about hard academia, but also on that relationship between academia and the legal profession. So we're bang in the middle of Zone 1. Our Mile End campus, for those of you who have reasons to go there, who want to use the library facilities there, there's some lovely facilities at Mile End. Our library has just been extensively revamped on that campus in the last couple of years, with a real focus on providing working space for students. And in fact, you can even hire a small little room you can lock yourself into, like a little cubbyhole office, if you want to get in and have some really quiet workspace. It's a lovely facility, and it's probably, well, I can do it in about 30 minutes door to door on the central line between the two campuses. So it is a very nice facility to have relatively close by. CCLS is not to blow our own trumpet, but let's call it for what it is. We do very well on rankings. We are a strong brand. We are very well known internationally, and particularly we've got very strong links with the legal profession across all our specialisms internationally. It's something we have worked hard to maintain over the years, and it's something we're very proud of. And it is a bit of a bonus if you study at CCLS to have that brand behind your degree. In terms of our faculty, we have a wide range of expertise. As you can tell from my fluid tones, I am not myself English. Actually, a minority, I would say, of our academic staff are English. We instead draw our expertise from all over the world. So we have intellectual property expertise from Australia. We have folks from a Greek background in quite a lot in shipping and insurance. We have people from all over the world. Our TMT team has historically been some English, Irish, Scottish, a bit of American. So we are a very, very internationalized faculty, and that brings with it a lot of European and extra-European legal perspectives, understandings, ways of looking at things, because we don't want to offer you a degree where you just do English law. Now, we talk about English law rather a lot because that's where we are. But we look at that more as a case study, as a way of opening up, looking at, well, in some modules we look at English law because that's an example of how one particular state has dealt with the issues. A lot of other modules are by design comparative law modules where we will explicitly look at a range of jurisdictions. But that internationality is a very important part of our offering and what we do at CCLS, and we very much draw on that. As well as that, the staff teaching you are actively researching, writing. I'm working on a book myself at the minute, looking at international comparisons and the ethical issues involved when you get that interrelationship between the media and ongoing court cases. So some of you may well have been watching recently the fallout from that terrible stabbing last summer in Southport in the UK, Stockport, and all of that, the fallout from that with Elon Musk and people like Nigel Farage weighing in and riots and all that sort of thing. And a lot of that directly touched on an area that I am particularly interested in my research and my writing on that interrelationship. We want the courts to be reported because that's open justice. We want to know what's going on in our legal system, how it works. We want to see that it is transparent and fair. But at the same time, we also don't want the media to disrupt that and to threaten the integrity of the justice procedure. So that's, my particular thing. I've got colleagues across a whole range of areas working on a very wide range of aspects of how the commercial legal world interplays with issues of regulation, ethics, and so on. Now, our principal, Colin Bailey, is very fond of saying during his speech at graduation, and you'll no doubt hear this at some point if you come and study with us, that you're not just learning from people who give you textbooks to read, but at Queen Mary, you're very often learning from the people who wrote the textbooks. Now, at CCLS, because our teaching is very research focused, is very focused on things, as we go through them, as we hit the new cutting edge areas, including things like new modules, new work on AI, generative AI, and the implications of that, you're actually working and being taught by the people who not only wrote the textbooks, but very often are about to write the cutting edge textbooks that haven't quite come out yet. So you're getting the benefit of that before anybody else has the chance. And that's something we're proud of at CCLS. In terms of our wider CCLS community, we're not only focused on providing an LLM because that's important. It's what we do. We're educators, we're a university, we teach. And in order to be recognized for having learned something, you have to do some exams. And then, you get an LLM and that recognizes that you've learned something and learned it quite well. And that's a core part of what we do. But we also go beyond that to offer activities, events, things that are not things that will certainly benefit your studies, but are not solely part of that, to create other opportunities for learning, for interacting with the profession. Our student body is incredibly international. We have students from all over the world. A few years ago, I had a class where I did directly ask them where everybody was from. And I think out of 150 students in that particular class, we counted just over 80 separate jurisdictions. So you will be sitting amongst people from a lot of different backgrounds with a lot of different perspectives from very different legal systems. And that really adds to the experience. Because one of the things we like to do in class is to have you interact. And it's a lot of fun when you get a discussion going where you say, right, okay, so here's how maybe English law or European law does it. What do they do elsewhere? To have somebody put their hand up and say, well, that's quite ridiculous because it clearly doesn't work. We do it this way where I'm from, and that's much more sensible. That's the kind of thing where we get really interesting peer learning. And that relationship, of course, will go on beyond your degree, as we'll come back to in a bit. Now, as well as these extended opportunities for interaction and learning beyond regular classes, we also have a range of Q legal projects that involve pro bono work and dealing with uh, advising clients from outside the university and getting direct practicing experience in that, which is one of a range of things we offer from our focus on employability beyond the LLM, as well as an academic qualification. You will get a lot of opportunities to do classes on things like CV writing, interview practice, and all sorts of uh, work experience, discussions, and a dedicated team there for careers advice, which is really helpful in the modern world. Now, as I mentioned, we're located right in the middle of town. One of the things that is a short walk away from our building is the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, based in Russell Square. Now, that institute incorporates within it quite probably the finest legal library in London, of which Queen Mary is the major funder. And as the major funder, that gives you our prospective students, all of our students, when they sign up with us, the right to access and to use that library. And that is absolutely invaluable when you're doing research essays and things, particularly should you choose to do a dissertation at a later stage. Now, we're not only based in London, we don't only offer programs in London. You see our lovely London building, Sir Roygood House on the left, named after our founder. On the right is a nod to Singapore, where we have a relationship with the Singapore Management University and a program that works with them. And in the middle, I'm particularly fond of this one. If you look in the middle distance behind the young lady who's one of our alumni, you will see a shape that should look particularly familiar, and that is the Eiffel Tower, which is about a block away from the building that we teach in on our LLM in Paris, which is a different program from the London LLM. It's a very lovely one, not least because it means I get to go and teach in Paris for a few nights every year, which I like rather a lot. But it's another one of the programs we offer, and it may be that's something that appeals to you and that you want to look into. Our London-based LLM is one of the largest LLM programs in the world. We are, by some considerable distance, the largest provider of LLMs in the UK. We've got, at the last count, somewhere north of 180 modules. So the range of choice we offer across about 20 different specialized programs is really unparalleled. And it's something we are very proud of, I think rightly so, that we offer that range of different options. Whatever you want to do, we've probably got an LLM for it. And if we don't have, well, it would be unusual if we didn't have something to offer you that you find interesting. We tend to have hundreds of students at any one time, including our PhD students and students on all of our different programs. We probably have somewhere in the region of 1,000 students, and most of those will be from outside the UK. So it really is a very international program and gives you a really interesting social experience beyond your formal studies. Now, the range of choice we have and the nature of our offerings does mean you have the opportunity to follow a course of study in a very specialized area, and even within your chosen stream, alongside maybe the more traditional aspects, you have opportunities to explore stuff that's really cutting edge, that's very new. I mean, for example, if you are interested in intellectual property or in a media context, we are the only program, the only LLM program that is certainly in the UK that is offering animal law, a course that looks specifically with Jo Gibson, who is one of our intellectual property professors and who is an absolute global leader in her areas. Jo looks at the use of animals in an intellectual property context to talk all about the monkey selfie, if you're familiar with that meme. She'll look at the use of animals in movies, how's that regulated, things like the fur industry, things like the law that dictates the standards that affect the treatment of the animals that provide the leather for a leather jacket or shoes, or really fascinating stuff. We also have interactive entertainment law. Gaetano Demetia. Gaetano is a Sicilian lawyer by origin who came to us to do his LLM with us about 20 years ago. I supervised his dissertation because I'm very old now. And he decided he liked it so much with us, he not only did his PhD with us, but became a member of faculty. And Gaetano is absolutely passionate about two things, the law and video games, and has created a fascinating world around that, where he teaches interactive entertainment law, all the legal issues around the video games industry. He teaches about esports. He runs the More Than Just a Game conference and is involved in the journal that's tied to that. Really, fascinating guy, really interesting stuff. We do film law, that's Jo Gibson again, which is about the movie business. And there's one of those modules where you actually, as part of the learning process, looking at all the legalities around the finances of movies, you look at creating a movie as a group effort. Another thing that we are introducing now is theatre law, regulation of what it says, the theatre industry in London, which is, well, what's the only other world centre of theatre that rivals London's West End? Maybe Broadway in New York. So a significant place to be looking at that field. So, Fashion law, again, Joe Gibson does fashion law, looking at the legalities around the fashion industry, from creation of brands, the intellectual property, what you can and can't control, who doesn't own the rights to a design of a dress or a suit. We're the kind of stuff that we're doing at CCLS is really, it's field defining. I'm quite happy to talk in those really big terms about colleagues of whom I am frankly constantly in awe of what they achieve. So, because of the level of specialism we offer, and also the breadth, the sheer range of stuff we offer, it gives you a lot of opportunities to tailor your LLM to really take you as to where you want to go. This is not a program where we give you a list of modules and say, right, you're doing a media law LLM, here are the modules you're going to study. We give you a long list and say, which modules do you want to study? So the program breaks down like this. It's a credit system. If there are any other people out there like me with the guilty secret of having spent a number of their teenage years playing things like Warhammer, I won't tell Yanni, it's all right, nerd pride. The LLM will be very familiar to the idea of an army list. Essentially, we give you a certain number of credits. You can do a certain number of modules that add up to that number of credits. Unfortunately, I'll preempt this question because we get it every year once people arrive with us. We do make you make a choice. You can't study more than the number of classes you've got credits for. I'm afraid that's the one drawback of the range of choice we offer, that you do have to make a choice. But nonetheless, it is what it is. Now, of your 180 credits, because obviously when you make your application, you apply to sign up to do a particular specialism. So your first 120 credits are narrowed down and they must be chosen from within your own specialism. And there are certain rules about how that's done. Some LLMs require you to do a dissertation, which is a 30 credits. So you would choose then 150 credits of taught, 120 from your module, and then a bit more freedom with the remaining 30. Other programs, including technology, media, telecoms, which is the one I'm primarily involved in, do not require you to do a dissertation. We'll talk a little bit more about that going forward. But basically, once you've chosen your 120 credits for your specialist modules to qualify for your specialism for the LLM, then you've got another 60 credits. If you are doing a program which does not obligate you to do a dissertation, then you could pick full 60 credits outside your specialism. So if you're doing TMT and you decide you've got a particular interest in trademark laws, then you could pick that as one of your optional credits from the intellectual property list. That becomes an option. Your dissertation, of course, the 30 credits on that will come within your specialism as well. Your dissertation must relate to your specialism. But that's the broad outline of how the program works. So to break that down a little bit more, if you're doing an entirely taught route, where you choose not to do a dissertation because you're taking a program that's optional and you don't want to do a dissertation, then you have to choose at least 120 credits from your specialism. And then the remaining 60 credits can either come from within your specialism, and that's fine if you're really dedicated to intellectual property and you don't want to study anything else. You can do that all within IP. On the other hand, if there are some modules outside that you fancy the look of, maybe you fancy doing a little bit of something that's available on dispute resolution, or something that's not part of the IP program, but is just, a little bit different that you think would be helpful for how you have in mind where your career will go, um, or you just fancy it because it's a little bit of a change and something different, and that's fine too. Then you've got that 60 credits where you can choose that. Now, any of you who have signed up to do the General Laws LLM, that's a specialism that's not a specialism as such, in that General Laws LLM means you will have LLM in law, would be the title on your certificate ultimately, but you then can choose any modules you want from anywhere in the whole program in order to formulate your program, subject to the proviso that obviously with so many modules on offer, you have to make sure your classes wouldn't clash. Now, if you were to follow a specialism that requires a dissertation, or you choose to do a dissertation, then that's obviously 30 credits of your 180, leaves you 150 to play with for top modules. Now, the dissertation itself is 10,000 words long. It's something that involves a lot of self-study. So if you're thinking, do I want to do a dissertation or not? You need to think about, well, it's 10,000 words. It's generally written during the second semester, with your final date for submission in mid-August. You do have to submit an idea for a title in November. You're not totally bound by that. That gets refined with your assigned supervisor. But, if you're sitting in November or at the earlier year thinking, I have no idea what I could possibly want to write about, can you tell me what I should write about? That's maybe an indication a dissertation isn't necessarily for you. Uh, to be very clear on this, whether or not you have a dissertation makes no difference to the validity of your LLM ultimately at the other end. It is simply a different route through it than an entirely taught program. Where it's a good idea to think about a dissertation is if you have in mind that a PhD might be in your future, then really pretty much anywhere worth getting into for a PhD program, and certainly us, uh, would be looking for evidence you'd done a longer piece of independent writing as part of your LLM. So that would be one reason it would be a good idea to think about a dissertation, if where you're doing a program where that's optional. And the other reason, really, if you're thinking about PhD as a possibility, writing a 10,000 word dissertation is a nice sort of introduction to the idea of working independently with some guidance from a supervisor. So, if you do that and come to the end of it and think, that was a terrible experience, I can't possibly face the idea of doing that again. And again, then, that's a learning experience. That would say, PhD, maybe not for you. But if you get to the end of it and think, that was amazing, I loved that, I'd love to spend 3 years doing this, PhD might be your bag. So that's something to consider as part of looking at our offering. Now, again, if you're doing a dissertation, those 30 credits, because the dissertation must be within your specialism, that counts towards the 120 credits of your specialism that you must do as a minimum to qualify for the specialism. So that means you then have to do at least 90 more credits within your specialism, and up to a maximum of 60 credits from outside it. Now, when you're looking at the specialisms in which you're interested, this is one thing to bear in mind, because, as I've said, in a number of programs, TMT, intellectual property, for example, the dissertation is an elective, it's an optional program. In others, including insurance law, it is compulsory. So if you really, really don't want to do a dissertation, that's something to bear in mind. Now, this little diagram, which reminds me of the Giant's Causeway in the old country, is an indication as to how really a lot of our things sometimes plug together and interrelationships between different programs that you may or may not think about. So banking and fintech is a very significant area. I wrote a chapter in a book that Professor George Walker, who again, an incredible legal mind, and George's teaching is so much fun because he's so passionate and enthusiastic about it. Um, but I contributed to a book George is putting out on fintech and cybersecurity law, and a sort of review of what's going on across the world in that area. And obviously, there's a big link between banking. Inevitably, banking nowadays is not you go into a bank when they're open between 10 and 3 p.m. and shut for lunch, and somebody at the other end, you fill in a little slip and you hand it over and somebody gives you cash. That I guess still kind of exists to some extent. Certainly not with my bank, Santander, who are rapidly closing branches as they discover them. But for most people now, banking involves technology, even if on the base level that means paying with a payment card. I rarely, particularly after the pandemic, ever handle cash. Just use a card because it's convenient and easy. And so that inevitably means technology has become a very big part of the banking world. Now, if you were starting from a perspective of saying, right, I'm studying banking law and I want to take fintech options, something that might come up to you would be then, okay, well, hang on a minute then. You might want to look at doing one of the e-commerce modules that Laura Edgar and Chris Reed have traditionally taught, because there's an awful lot of finance law nowadays involved in dealing with online transactions. So that takes you into a bit of technology law. You might potentially think about doing a little bit of energy law, because you're thinking, well, okay, all of this technology increasingly requires the use of energy, whether it's AI that I'm dealing with a bank chat bot giving me financial advice, and the questions about legal responsibility for that and ownership of that tech. This all puts a lot of demand on the use of energy that didn't exist to the same extent when a bank's use of energy meant they put the heating on and the lights on, and somebody sat behind a desk and waited for you to come in and ask for your money back. So, there are all these sorts of interrelationships between what we do. And it's like that old game, 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon. Uh, a lot of laws like that. So when you're thinking about what modules you'd be interested in, working out from your initial specialism and your route through that specialism, and looking at using some of that flexible option to choose stuff from elsewhere, that's something that's worth looking at and worth thinking about. So, as I've already mentioned, really, with the dissertation, it is a chance to get your teeth into a topic of interest. Usually, this would be where you've been looking at your classes and doing some of your reading, and a comment gets mentioned in passing where you're sitting there in the lecture and this sparks your neurons and goes, and you suddenly realize that's a fascinating question. And you go and you say to the tutor, and they say, yes, that's a fascinating question. Unfortunately, it's one that's too big to fit within this module. So we're not really going to be able to look at that in depth. That's a good sort of starting point for a dissertation, because lots of students will be from all sorts of international backgrounds. You might come in and be saying, right, I'm looking at this module and doing European or English law or something, law that's new to me on this area. And this is a thing that's a problem back home, and we don't have law on this yet back home. So I'm going to write my dissertation analyzing this law and saying, would that solve the problem we've got back home where we don't have a law, or where I'm not sure our law is the right way to go about it? And you can explore that in a dissertation. And, sometimes you will find yourself saying, look, lads, let's do it like the English do. That makes sense. Other times you might be saying, no, 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 no. What they do in England and what they do elsewhere is a stupid way to do this. Our way is much better. Here's my explanation why. So a dissertation can be really a great way of getting your teeth into something where it's not something that, because of the inevitable limitations of a module that runs for a semester, there's time to get into that particular area, or where it's something that has a cross link between two different areas covered by different modules that isn't quite addressed by them because of the nature of it being a really niche, interesting area. That's the real chance where a dissertation gives you a chance to explore that. Now, as I've mentioned, it does mean a lot of working on your own. You will be provided with a supervisor who can give you some advice on writing, can give you some tips on how to do the research, but they don't do the work for you. They don't read it and say, change this, this, and this before you submit. You really are doing a lot of work on your own in this, so you have to be comfortable working on your own. That's the main thing about that. But for those reasons, it is a great insight into what it might be like to do a PhD if you're thinking about that as an option in future. Now, supporting our teaching and all our other activities, we have a number of institutes across here. Now, the best one of these, obviously, is the TMT Law Institute, because I was its founding director. The Intellectual Property Institute is great because I'm a member of that one as well. The others are all good too. But these are research clusters that bring together the teams teaching in particular areas. They are focal points for doing events and all sorts of extracurricular stuff as well, which also generally means there's an opportunity for students to get involved in that via their research institutes and via their reps, not only to go along as audience, but also to potentially get involved with organization, with helping run events, with putting together events that are run by students. And you will find the institutes tied to your specialisms will offer support if you get together as a student body through your reps and say, we'd really like a presentation on this sort of an area. You will find staff who will be able to say, that's a good idea. Here's how you might do that. And we'll give some level of support to actually making that happen. Now, what do we need to get in? Because we would love to have everybody come to study with us, but we do put some limits on it. There are some pre-requirements. So basically, for your undergraduate degree, because you need to have done an undergraduate degree, preferably in law, although we will also accept a degree that has a very substantial law content. So that might be law as a joint discipline or criminology potentially. We do require an upper second class honours qualification. So basically a 2-1 from a UK university. We sometimes accept a 2-2 if somebody has other legal qualifications and substantial professional experience. So, for example, if you got a 2-2 or equivalent 10 years ago, and you've spent the last 10 years working directly in the field of technology law, and you want to do a TMT LLM, or working with a substantive amount of intellectual property law, and you want to follow the IP path, that would be something we would consider on a discretionary basis. So well worth making the application if you're interested and that's the position you're in. There are a lot more details about all of this and the application process on the URL on the slide, and you'll be able to have a look at that. Um, and these slides will be made available after the event. In terms of language, obviously, if you're from the UK or have, you know, been here for a very long time and studied here and worked here and all the rest of it, that's not a problem. Um, if your first degree, which must have been taken within the last 5 years, so that is a restriction, is in an English-speaking country or taught in English, there are some places that qualify for an exemption to that. Not everywhere. I know the law changed in the government in the UK changed the law a couple of years ago. If you're coming from India, you now have to have an IELTS, irrespective of whether you were taught in English. But it's worth, that will vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and it's worth just double checking what the requirements are from there. If we do require IELTS from you, we require a 7 overall with a 7 in writing and at least a 5.5 in reading, listening, and speaking. Now, I acknowledge that is quite high. The reason we do that is it is quite a demanding program in terms of the English language. And for somebody who didn't meet the IELTS standard, it really wouldn't be fair for them to sit through classes that they wouldn't be able to follow. But for those of you proficient in English, that shouldn't be a problem, the IELTS. And we look for that to be fairly recent. Again, the language requirements are fully laid out on our website and all the implications of those. And as well as that, we do at Queen Mary offer additional support classes that are available for writing in legal language and so on, which will be helpful. If you are looking at this from a perspective of studying with English as a second language, don't be put off by that. Don't feel that, oh no, everybody else will be ahead of me or anything, because, although we do apply the IELTS standard to everybody, the other thing to bear in mind is that maybe 70% of the students in your class will also be studying through the medium of English as a second language. So, that it's not an unusual experience. It's something people do cope with very well. It's something we're very aware of is a position for often a majority of our students. So we also are in a position to be aware of that, and the support is there for that. Now, when you go beyond the LLM, one of the things that we're very proud of is that there is a high rate significantly high rate of our students coming out of the LLM being in employment within 6 months of graduation. And yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, it wouldn't matter. This would all be about having an education, becoming a more rounded person. And, that's the ideal. The reality is the world is what it is. This is a significant financial investment in your future. And so it does matter to people, and very rightly so, that that will have tangible benefits. So we are proud of our high rates of post-qualification employment. And we do, as I mentioned earlier, provide a number of specialist career advisors who do give you a lot of opportunities throughout the year with us on the LLM for not only your academic qualifications to enhance you as a candidate for employment at the other end, but to do dummy interviews, to practice CV writing, to get advice on how to go about making applications, where to apply, what sort of firms are good to think about for the area you're interested in, that kind of stuff. That is all there and available, and it is something you really should take full advantage of with us, because that team are really great and really supportive. Uh, we have in these photographs are just a number of examples. We have in the region of 13,000 of our alumni going back over the last number of years have been uh, are directly and actively involved in our wider CCLS community across 100 different countries. We have a whole range of different alumni chapters that have been set up that are established and available on LinkedIn. I've been involved in discussions within the last year of a new one being created in Central Eastern Europe. As we have a large group of alumni there they meet regularly, they have dinner. When we have academics who are traveling abroad, we'll quite often arrange a get together if we're going to be somewhere near one of the chapters. It's a lot of fun. It's a great opportunity to network. And a lot of our alumni over the years have not only stayed in touch socially because they made friends and it's fun, but they also work together professionally. We quite often hear about students who studied a particular area together. They go on to practice it, and one of them comes up with a question that involves the law of one of their classmates, that other jurisdiction, or where they're looking for ideas, and they will often contact each other and be a sort of mutually supportive resource about being part of that next generation, developing, working with the laws that they learned about at CCLS in the profession. We have alumni chapters, 28 alumni national chapters currently, and that is something that is regularly expanding. So the relationship with CCLS is, I say this in full deference, knowing I have a Sicilian colleague, we're a bit like the mafia. You know, once you get in, you don't get out again. We don't let you go easily. If we decide we like you, we want to keep hold of you, so to speak. So there is that opportunity to stay involved with this going forward. And on a personal level, and I know a lot of other colleagues, love to hear about students I taught and what they've gone on to do and how they've found a career where CCLS had that impact, where they had enthusiasm fired for an area, or it led through various opportunities to go on and work in that area. And that loops right back to us again with our research-led focus on teaching, because those students go on to become the international practicing leaders in certain areas. That influences the law and the development of the law at the cutting edge that we study and look at. So in turn, this is one of the ways that going through CCLS, you can then reflect back into the process. And a lot of our alumni really, really enjoy that. Now, there are a number of useful links here. Again, I'm not going to dwell on these significantly because you'll have access to these slides later on. I would say I am available on LinkedIn. I'm slowly learning to remember to engage with it on a more regular basis and to check in more regularly. I used to use, well, I still have a Facebook profile, but I used to use it for alumni contacts and things. But LinkedIn is a better platform for that now, and I'm making that transition. So, I mean, if you have any questions, particularly about TMT areas or an interest in media law and so on, do please feel free to drop me a line. My email address, which is on our website, is the fastest way to get to me. But the other than that, you can try LinkedIn as well, and by all means, link up there and going forward. But that takes us to the end of the formal presentation. Thank you for listening to that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, make myself visible here. I can see Karina again. Hello.
Hello.
And so we'd like to throw the floor open at this point to Any questions there are? I see there are a
I've
few
got,
popped up below.
yeah, I've got quite a few for you. I've answered 44 so far. Uh,
Wow,
but
doing well.
I've got seven in the queue at the moment. The ones at the top are a bit more specific to you or to an academic. So
Yeah.
if you want to have a look at those.
Okay. So yeah, I can see Rebecca's question. Rebecca's interested in technology law and wants to know a bit about that specialization, and would it also cover the murky world of crypto, which of course is much in the news now via the uh, interesting developments in the US in the last 48 hours or so. And you've probably been watching that uh, the newly installed President Trump again and his wife Melania have introduced their own crypto memes and so on. Now, TMT, we do address the issue of electronic payments, particularly those do come up for discussion in the e-commerce related modules. Actually, historically, we have a link there. My first area of focus at CCLS was on electronic payments as they existed in 1999. I came on board initially funded by a research project looking at that, which was long before crypto, as we now understand it, became a thing. But I mean, if you're particularly interested in that and looking at TMT, I would say you'd be looking as an absolute start point at the e-commerce modules. And then also you might be looking at some of the stuff that George Walker and the team in banking and finance are doing. And there will be relevant aspects to fintech and so on that. So you might do a TMT specialism with a number of credits from fintech, or it might be, if you look at the balance, if particularly crypto and financial tech are your thing, you might be looking at the financial law, banking and finance specialism with the e-commerce elements of TMT from your free choice credits. I would say that would be the primary element of focus. TMT more broadly also includes media. Of course, my area is regulating commercial media in its broadest sense, television, broadcasts, social media, and those sorts of things, which have more of a focus in what I do on content rather than specifically payment issues. And we also offer telecoms and so on. But I'd say e-commerce would be the elements of TMT you'd be particularly looking at with an interest in crypto. Um, Frida says, good morning from Mexico. A good morning to Mexico. I imagine it's ridiculously early there, so well done for being alert at this point of your day. Right, so Frida's interested in the distinction between the AI and the law LLM and the TMT LLM. The AI and the law is a newly introduced specialism, which, Karina, that is going to be available for September intake, isn't it?
Yes.
So that will be the first intake on that particular specialism. There will be a level of crossover in terms of the people teaching it, uh, no doubt, but they we have separated out the specialisms somewhat. AI on the law has a very specific focus on artificial intelligence and developments in that at the cutting edge of that tech, and the fact that Gen AI is going to destroy all art and human creativity forever. Um, that's a big focus throughout that. Um, TMT will be your other tech media stuff, also cutting edge, but won't be as focused on artificial intelligence and that type of stuff. So they are related thematically, but we have made the decision in recent times that AI is becoming such a significant focus across such a range of areas that it made sense to have its own dedicated specialism where that's very much the focus. and that is recognized as a specialism. Uh, well, you will find there are elements of the modules within each specialism that are of interest, depending on how much focus you want to do on AI and you know which one of the two you want to follow as your primary specialism and have in your certificate, which may be partly about how you see marketing yourself career-wise going forward and your personal branding, and you know which one you want to keep and say, right, I'll do some of that in my free credits. Right, so Marguerite, hi, bonjour. Marguerite is joining us from France. So you come from a human rights background, aiming to transition into business and corporate law, which is an area that needs more human rights in it. So good for you. The focus on ESG, mergers, private law, European market, modules on common law theory. Uh, I think really the thrust of your question, Marguerite, comes down to um, whether you're going to do a general LLM or would you be better looking for a specialized pathway. That really is a decision for yourself. Now, a lot of students do like to have the specialism if they particularly want to market themselves in a certain way. If you have your background in human rights and you want to make that transition, having that corporate and commercial law brand on your certificate could be a way of doing that and saying, look, you know, this is what I'm doing, a way of selling yourself that way. So that's certainly worth considering. The general LLM is the most flexible of all of them because you can do anything with that. Basically, it puts no specialism restrictions on our offerings in that way. But it really depends whether you want the branding of the specialism. Now, I would say from what you're interested in doing, I think pretty much everything there, it falls very squarely within the corporate and commercial specialism. So if you're deciding between the two, uh, that might be a bit of a steer as well, where you have the specialism title, but I think you'll also find everything that you've specifically said you're interested in comes under that. So those, I think, would be the questions I'd be asking in your position that will help you make that choice ultimately. Uh, we have anonymous attendee. Hello, anonymous. Um, for the MSc Law and Finance, um, the MSc is a separate program which doesn't run under the same credit numbers as doesn't run slightly differently from the LLM. I'm afraid I don't teach on that one, so I don't know the delineations directly on that. You would need to speak to admin about that. They'll qualify exactly what the balance is between them, but I believe yes, there is a specific credit balance in your numbers across the two. But because I'm not directly involved in that particular program, I can't fairly confirm that that's exactly what it is, or what the limits are there. More generally, though, the question on the having a dissertation topic, you don't need to have decided what, if you're going to write a dissertation because that's required or you want to write one, you don't have to have a topic directly in mind before you enroll. We ask you for an indicative title in November. So you've got a few weeks to come up with an idea and make a decision as to what you want to write about. And you're not bound by that forever, because generally meeting number one with every dissertation student I've ever supervised is, yes, that's a lovely idea, but you do realize that's a PhD. that's 100,000 words to write that. Let's cut it down to something that works in 10,000 words. I that's quite common. It's normal. It's part of the writing process to revise down and have the scope that is narrow enough that you get the depth in 10,000 words. So you're not tied to in November. Well, no, this is what you wrote in the form. You've got to write that now. Uh, it does evolve as the process, but the short answer is no. You don't have to have a topic in mind at all until the November submission date. When you enroll, when you pick your modules and you say, I want to do a dissertation, you don't have to have it. You don't have to submit the title at that point. Although it's a good idea uh, when you are committing to say, I want to do a dissertation, to have at least an idea that there's something you want to write about. But don't worry about that till after you put the application in and you've matriculated with us and you're at the point in September of choosing your actual modules. Chris, you're welcome. Chris is from St. Kitts and Nevis, banking and finance law again. The answer to your question is it depends. So the question here is, are students required to answer all exam or assignment questions in keeping with UK law, or would students have the opportunity to discuss matters from their home country's perspective? It depends on the assessment and the class. With essays and research, and particularly dissertations, there's a lot of scope for comparative stuff. If you're dealing with an exam with practical application questions, in a talk class, we start from the point that, because this is assessing you on what you've learned while you're with us, if somebody comes along and writes an answer to an exam based on their home country's law, which we may or may not be familiar with, it's not really indicative of anything they've actually learned while they're at CCLS. So we would tend to discourage that. But on a module by module basis, it will be made clear just exactly what is and isn't expected in the assessment.
Sorry, I just wanted to say I am aware that we are a little bit behind.
Yeah.
So I think we should probably wrap this up. I know there's some questions that we didn't answer. There was 67 questions. So hopefully we got to most of them. If we didn't get to your question, we do these webinars quite often. We also do them based on programs. So usually Gavin or somebody else from the TMT program will do a webinar specifically on TMT, and I'll send those emails out to you guys. So in the meantime, look out for that. But thank you very much, Gavin, for
You're welcome.
assisting with this. And thank you everyone for attending. And keep in touch with us. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Good luck. We'll see some of you in September.
Perfect. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.